to some power rankings, shall we? Everybody loves power rankings. Our Brandon Marcello's got his first edition hot off the press. Brandon is buying the Horns hype. Texas takes that top spot in this first installment with Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, and Georgia rounding out the top 5. In fact, all of last year's expanded CFP teams are in Brandon's top 30, except for SMU, who is not listed in this very early edition of Brandon's power rankings. We've got Brandon Marcello alongside our quarterback, Danny Kanell, joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. Brandon, exciting stuff here for your first round of power rankings. I want to start by talking about the top 7. Pretty familiar if you've seen the AP. It lines up directly with that. Why the confidence that those 7 teams are the best in college football?
First off, I'm excited that the AP agrees with me because I did these several weeks ago before the AP poll came out, so that's interesting. I am happy that the voters decided to put Penn State at number 2 because I believe that they deserve to be stacked there because of the talent they've got coming back, because of the veteran leadership they have, and then arguably maybe the 2 best coordinators in the country, Andy Kotelnicki on offense, and then Jim Knowles, fresh off winning a national championship at Ohio State. It's very clear Penn State went all in on this year to win a championship. They've got a lot more coming back than Ohio State. I really like them at that number 2 spot going into the year.
I like them even better, Brandon. I like them at number 1 because of what they're bringing back. I'm a big believer in returning talent, especially quarterback talent. I know everybody's talking about Arch Manning. I think it could be a little bit bumpy for him, so I'm a little bit more bullish on them. And I would have Clemson for the same reason, bringing back Cade Klubnik, bringing back a lot of the defensive pieces, have one of the best wide receiving cores. A little bit more bullish on Clemson and Penn State, but these teams are all very close. I think that's the thing that's interesting, and you looked at the voters, the points difference in the AP top 25, and I'm sure it was a really tough decision for you as well, Brandon. These teams are really, really tight as far as the margins.
I'm going to be excited to see how those teams kind of shuffle through these first couple of weeks of the season to that top 7. Very interesting. Just outside, though, the top 10 is where we find Illinois. We saw Brett Bielema's Fighting Illini tie a program record last year with 10 wins, Brandon, and that's their magic number. They come in at number 10 on your list here.
Listen, Brett Bielema was born to be a Big Ten coach and to win in the Big Ten, and their offensive line, I think, by the end of this year is going to be a top 5 unit. It's going to fit perfectly into what they're going to be able to do offensively. You have a veteran quarterback in Luke Altmaier coming back. Most of the pieces offensively return other than their top 2 receivers. And I keep getting pushback from people going, hey, they don't have their top 2 receivers. And then I ask, when was the last time we looked at Brett Bielema team and went, they're winning because they have great receivers? They're winning because they can dominate the line of scrimmage and dominate time of possession when they have to and keep the game within arm's length so that they can win the game in the fourth quarter or pull away in the fourth quarter. I think Illinois is in position to make the playoff this year. They were very close last season. I like the way the schedule sets up for them. I'd like for them to maybe be that 3rd team from the Big Ten in the playoff this year, maybe even more so than Oregon, which I have them ranked ahead of them right now. But Oregon, among all those top 10 teams, is the one that I could see being unranked potentially at the end of the season. Way too many questions about Oregon going into this year, replacing so much talent there.
Whew, that's a hot take. I like that one. We'll have to see about that one. But I do like Illinois, too, and I'm glad you give them some of the credit for what they bring back last season. You mentioned the losses there, but Luke Altmaier was one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten last season. He brings a veteran presence, and Brett Bielema brings a confidence, sort of a mojo to this squad that is infectious. We saw that on display when he's taking on Shane Beamer, almost walking out in the field, and they're talking trash, and they get that big win against an SEC team. I love their mentality. I love their physicality. Keep an eye on that Indiana game early. If you think Indiana's going to be back in that mix, that could be one that determines possibly which one of these teams kind of fits that 3rd or 4th spot in the Big Ten to be vying for a playoff spot. But I'm a big believer in Illinois, too.
It's going to be fun to see how they can keep this energy going along week in and week out. Going to be exciting for sure. Let's talk about a unorthodox, if you will, week 1 matchup. Bill Belichick. I don't know why I had a blank there. Bill Belichick going to be coaching his first college football game for UNC. Of course, on the other side of that matchup is TCU. Brandon, they come in at number 15 on your list this year.
I really like TCU, what they've got coming back at quarterback. I think that they're so gunning for a big bounce-back season this year. I mean, the worst thing that could have happened to Sonny Dykes was year 1 going to the college football playoff and setting all those expectations. But this is going to be a legitimately I think, a contender this year in the Big 12 to win that and potentially make the playoff. And here's the other thing I think that gives TCU some help going into this huge game against UNC. Remember 2 years ago, the first game was against Colorado when it was all eyes on Colorado. And Sonny Dykes has said he learned a lot from that experience. And now going into this, they're yet another big opener against another celebrity-type coach. I'm telling you, TCU is ready this season for that type of atmosphere, for that type of attention. And I think, I hate saying this cliche, I think they do have a chip on their shoulder about, everybody's talking about Bill Belichick. 2 years ago, all they were talking about was Deion Sanders. I think they're going to go in there gunning for a blowout on the road.
Wow, that's going to be an interesting outcome if that happens. Imagine the panic around Chapel Hill if that happens and people upset about the way the offseason unfolded. Josh Hoover is one of the better quarterbacks in the country. The Big 12 is littered with experienced quarterbacks who make great decisions with the football, and they're very comfortable within their systems. The one thing that I will question about that game is Bill Belichick, one of the greatest defensive minds that we've seen to ever walk a sideline. Granted, it was in the NFL, not college. What type of game plan does he have against Josh Hoover and Sonny Dykes, an offensive mastermind in his own right? That, to me, is the chess match that I can't wait to see. But I think TCU is clearly one of those teams from the many in the Big 12 that could step up and be that in contention for the Big 12 championship.
Oregon unranked, TCU blowout. Brandon Marcello with the spicy takes to set the tone in week 1. Let's see. We'll wrap it up here with the Big 12. As we've been talking about some of these teams, you've got 7 in your top 30 from that conference, Brandon. And I know that the SEC and the Big 10 kind of run the conversations when it comes to the college football playoff landscape. But what's going on with the Big 12 here? Why the love there in your top 30?
I think, as Danny said, it's the quarterbacks. They returned so many quarterbacks that threw for more than 2,400 yards last season. You know, this is the year of the quarterback in the Big 12. And those teams, there's going to be a tightly contested race, just like it was last year. It was a 4-team race, really, at the top. I think it's going to be very similar this season. I think the Big 12 has an opportunity this year to get 2 teams into the playoff and maybe actually make some noise in there. I think they have been penalized too much because they beat up on each other. And I do think that it was probably smart on Commissioner Brett Yormark's case to get rid of their preseason media poll. Because as you guys remember, Arizona State was voted on by dummies like me to finish last in the conference, and they end up winning the whole freaking thing and going to the college football playoff. I think we do read too much in the preseason rankings and these media polls and everything, and we set up and frame this picture and say anything outside that picture you can't think about. I love the Big 12 this year. The quarterback spots is the main reason why.
The depth of the conference is absolutely the strength of it, but also could be the weakness. Here's what worries me. The win totals for the league set by the odds makers, they're all the top teams and they're 8.5. So if they don't go well over that and you have a bunch of teams that are really competitive and kind of bang up on each other, can you get multiple, 9-3 teams in that playoff conversation? That's a really uphill battle when you talk about the perception of the league. But if they have a team that does step up, whether it's TCU, an Arizona State again, and one of those teams can just take kind of that flag and plant it in the ground and say, we're the best team in the Big 12, and they're the clear-cut best team, and then you have that second team, potentially like you saw last year with the ACC. SMU was the favorite. They were going in there. They had the best record. Then Clemson comes out of nowhere, beats them, so both of them get in. I think that's probably the best recipe for the Big 12. What concerns me is the carnage you could see with them beating up on each other, all these really good teams.
The parity right now in college football, that is what I am hearing from both of you, that these teams are coming in and making the most of the NIL and the transfer portal. Brandon's going to do this all season long for us here on CBS Sports HQ. Brandon, appreciate the time sharing your top 30 teams in college football. Of course, you can get more college football conversations with our Danny Kanell and the Cover 3 podcast crew by locking in to the Cover 3 podcast. Plenty of headlines and storylines to follow. They make it easy. Just scan that QR code on your screen.